Hello, we are joined by Andrew Whitworth, the legendary left tackle, current analyst, as well as Will Campbell's friend. Want to make sure we get that last part in there. Obviously, Patriots draftee Will Campbell, we can call him now, Whit. And I appreciate you signing off on me calling you Whit. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. All is good. It's got to workout in. Still,
Like to
still,
hear it.
still in training mode, baby. Still in training
Yep.
mode. Even though I'm not putting any pads on anytime soon.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. And so, for those who don't know, for some Patriots fans who don't know, you're rooted from West Monroe. Will grew up just a few miles away, so obviously there's that local tie. There's also the fact that you guys both played left tackle at LSU, and now Will's following your footsteps after shortly after you retired after a legendary 16-year career. So, I think simply put, there's a lot of different webs and connections there. Um, but if you could just kind of shed some light on, when you were introduced to Will and maybe your first impression of Will and how your relationship has really grown over time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably at the stage that I was at when he was younger, following me on kind of my path coming up, and he was a young kid. At some point in there, you start to hear his name as he comes up, and you're like, oh man, that's the young kid I've heard about it. People are excited about it, going to Neville High School and going to be a good player. And then you start to realize like there's more banter, like any of your kind of high school athletes that you hear. Man, people
Hmm.
start saying we think this guy's going to be special, and then you just continue to watch. And throughout time, we've had some little interactions here or there. And then when he was in college, I'd send him some message time to time, and just more from a standpoint of I got a lot of respect for the position, the expectations, all those things. I was a guy, when I was in high school, I had a lot of offers when I was a freshman in high school. I was already a really tall, big athlete. And so people didn't know what I would play. Now, I was a tight end up until my senior year in high school, but,
Hmm.
they knew, hey man, based off size and athleticism and stuff, this guy's going to play college sports. And so I know what some of those expectations are like. And so just over time, just reaching out when I can, and even through this draft process now, I've been in those shoes. And so I think it's
Yeah.
important when you've been there to give a little love back. And that's really the dynamic of our relationship is we're from the same place. We've got a lot of respect for each other. Obviously, probably somebody that, I would imagine, as he has said, he looked up to as he was playing. And then now I get a chance to, as I told him, it's his time to shine. And I get to be the guy who gets to claim him now and be his biggest fan.
Yeah. And you kind of just touched on this, but during the pre-draft process and actually on draft night, Will credited you as a player that he looked up to. He's done it a handful of times, and he said, pretty much exactly, it was a huge honor, to be able to have that connection. And I think he said, pick your brain on a few on some things. So you kind of just hinted at it a little bit, but what were some of those things you texted? What were some of the things you texted him when he was coming up and in college, and I guess even during the pre-draft process about going forward?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for all young athletes, man, is to continue to be yourself and what makes you special. Don't lose sight of that. And even when you get into these things now, where I didn't get to live in the NIL world, and so I have no idea what the college football landscape is like now as an
Hmm.
athlete. But I do understand expectations. I do understand the stress that it takes to put yourself under and the work it takes to be
Hmm.
successful at the highest levels. And so, what are some of those little nuggets and things that I can give you and just say, hey, man, listen, when you get to this agent process, when you get to the process of everyone's telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, like, man, you
Yep.
don't have to do anything. Like, you feel good about it. You make sure you choose to add people to your team that represent you and reflect you. And it sure seems like he's continuing to make great decisions. I mean, I know working with Duke Mayweather.
Hmm.
Listen, if I was a kid coming out in college, that's the first place I would go. I can tell you
Yeah.
that. And shoot, I wish when I was a younger player, Duke wasn't out there. But man, I mean, what a tremendous opportunity he's had there. I know the benefit he's talked about that's been to him. Man, I mean, to me, that is it's a no-brainer. If you're an offensive
Yeah.
lineman, to me, in this world, in this sport right now, finding people that specialize in it and know what they're talking about
Yep.
is the biggest thing. Duke is one that, listen, Duke's a special guy, but don't get it twisted. It's about the guys Duke's gotten a chance to be around, and
Yeah.
he gets to reflect with Lane Johnson and Teron Armstead and Tyron Smith and all these guys, Zach Martin, why they're good and what makes them who they are and what they continue to
Hmm.
work on and focus on as players. And so you get to pour that into what you do and build a program. It's going to be real special.
Yeah. No, yeah, appreciate all that insight. And I don't know if you saw it. There was kind of a funny video that was floating around right after. It was from Will's first trip to Gillette right after he was drafted, and he's standing on top of the light tower and or the lighthouse, I should say. And he points out the Bass Pro Shops kind of in the distance behind behind Gillette
Yeah,
Stadium, and says something to his dad. I think the quote was, "He's going to be on his Matt Light time." So obviously, I've learned a little
I know
bit, and
Matt well.
I know that's one of Will's hobbies, I guess you could say, off the field. But any other hobbies or interests that you have picked up on from Will, I guess kind of throughout knowing him.
No, I think when you talk about where a guy gets selected and who they are, right? I think it means a lot, and so I think
Hmm.
sometimes when teams are picking guys, I'm not saying it's your priority and why you pick a guy, but maybe when you're thinking of between guys or who we're trying to select, where are they going to thrive and what's the environment, maybe the city, and like who are we as an organization in a city? And is that really their element? Is that who they're going to
Hmm.
be? Because it's not that they couldn't make it in different scenarios, but maybe they thrive in certain ones. And so when you
Yeah.
look at Gillette and you look at that setup in Foxborough, like, that is Monroe and West Monroe, Louisiana on a much bigger scale. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I don't want to say it because Will's going to get offended. He played at Neville, which is, used to be a longtime rival of West Monroe, but West Monroe High School, I mean, the colors, the environment, the setting
Yeah.
in the middle of a community, the way it was. I mean, that is really what the Patriots are in that environment. And so that sense of pride and that element that he's going to be in is going to remind him a lot of
Yeah.
playing in North Louisiana and the environment he had in there. And then as an LSU Tiger, the pride that people all across the South of Louisiana and North Louisiana have in LSU Tigers and bleeding purple and gold. That's the element he's walking into in New England. And
Hmm.
so I think that is going to be something that's going to make him thrive, is that is the
Yeah.
feeling that he loves and he's been around and it's natural to him. And then you bring up the name and he said it in Matt Light. Like, you look at a guy like Matt Light who was really successful there, and that's who he is. Like a good old
Hmm.
boy, likes to have a good time and hunt and fish and do everything else. You know what? And guess what? Matt Light wasn't the biggest guy in the world, and he didn't have the
Yeah.
longest arms in the world, and all this type stuff that you heard about Will coming out. It was very similar, man. So it's a similar
Yep.
situation, and I hope Will. Listen, Will's going to thrive, man. All he cares about
Hmm.
is being successful, playing good football, and being a great teammate. And when you walk in the NFL and you got the talent, and that's what you're made of, you're going to have success.
Yeah. And to your point, he kind of, right after the draft, and he actually shared a little bit of a story with us, how he wanted to be with the Patriots. And I know like all draftees will say that, right? Like sometimes, but it did, like, based on him, based on what he said, and based on his conversations with Elliot Wolf, that Elliot Wolf kind of shed some light on as well. It was pretty clear that, Will really did have New England high on his priority list. And I'm sure a lot of what you just said is a reason why.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, and then also look at some of the similarities with Vrabel and who he is and what he's been
Hmm.
around with Matt Light and different guys. And then also Taylor Lewan in Tennessee, like a guy who was nasty and loved to get after it and talk crap and he wanted to play nasty physical football. And I think that's what he sees in Will, is somebody that, hey man,
Yeah.
this guy's going to embrace a style. He's going to not just be a player for us. It's not going to be, hey, I'm going to go out here and I'm just trying to create a name for myself and I'm just trying to be a brand or an image or whatever. This dude wants to play football and he wants to get after it. And I think he
Hmm.
sees a guy that he can really say, hey, can this dude be a bell cow? Can he be the leader, the driver of the bus, if you will, of that offensive line of, hey, he's built the right way to where, listen, you don't have to be the vet to be the
Yeah.
guy that sets the tone on an offensive line. Sometimes it is the young guy who comes in and's
Hmm.
got a little effort to him and just says, hey, man, I'm going to be nasty and physical, and you guys are going to have my back. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing. That's what I was as a young player in Cincinnati. So, I mean, I see Will with an opportunity to go set the tone there and really say,
Yep.
hey, I may not be the vet in this O-line room, but you better believe this is our identity and who we're going to be while I'm here.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you kind of just hinted at this too about, obviously such a big topic here in New England and elsewhere the last 6 weeks when it came to Will's arm length and wingspan and everything like that. And so I guess if you could just put on your analyst hat for a second, as well as, the legendary offensive tackle and playing the position, how do you think Will can kind of, find, succeed at left tackle, or maybe do you see him transitioning inside?
Yeah, I think sometimes when you get into that stuff, it's about playing analytics, if you will, with body types, and so
Yep.
people start to say, "Hey, let's just try to, increase the percentages that were right." I mean, to me, really, sometimes some of these people with that stuff, it just shows me how little they effing know about the position and how much they really are just guessing at who's a good lineman
Hmm.
and who's not. And so to me, it's about your ability to be assigned a task and find a way
Hmm.
to get that task done. And then are you made up of the kind of stuff it takes to down in and down out play consistent football at a really high level? Maybe you have short arms, figure it out. I was a high cut guy. I would look like a basketball player from really, waist
Yeah.
down as far as thin, long legs. Like you're not supposed to be able to anchor and be able to sit down on bull rushes and those kind of things. But I was able to figure it out. Right. And so I was able to
Hmm.
find what's my style going to be? How am I going to play? When people say, hey, you didn't punch as much, you caught people out. Yeah, because I knew what my detriments were. I knew what my weaknesses were. And so for me, it was about maintaining leverage and body position and balance throughout the block.
Hmm.
And what's the best possible way I can be in those positions all the time, getting on guys quickly, eliminating some of those opportunities. So for Will, it's going to be the same thing, man. Do you have a relentless passion to
Hmm.
figure out the way it is that you can play your absolute best? Because the joke of it all to me is like when you talk about offensive line play and you talk about techniques and all this, go look across the league. All 32
Hmm.
left tackles get in positions completely different. They're standing in their
Yep.
stance completely different. They use their hands, their body differently. But at certain points, like I always relate it to a golf swing, there's certain points of the block, they all look the same. The really good
Hmm.
ones, and they get in certain positions at the point of contact, at the point of, when they're touching somebody or they're trying to execute a block. Maybe those things look identical. And so that's really where it is everyone can look different, everyone can have different body types, but how do you get your job done and what do you have to figure it out? He's going to have to
Hmm.
develop his toolbox. And
Hmm.
his toolbox, Aaron Cromer, my offensive line coach for the Rams for a while, used to call it your toolbox. What are the different tools you have when you face somebody and you go, you know what, today that's not going to work? All right, so
Hmm.
I'm going to have to switch it up. Maybe today's the day I'm jumping somebody. Maybe today's the day I'm really violent with my hands. Maybe today's the day I'm patient with my hands. Like, what is your ability to figure that out, develop the toolbox, and then be relentlessly passion pursuit of, hey, I'm going to be the best I can possibly be in my position, and I will take no for, never take no for an answer. And so I think Will has built that way. And I think that's
Hmm.
why they drafted him there to be there. It's
Yeah.
because he is built the way to say, I will figure it out, man. I mean, when I
Yep.
got to the NFL, I remember when I went through the draft evals, like I couldn't really kick set. I wasn't a guy, I didn't naturally play offensive line growing up. I was a triple option guy in high school. So I was playing tight end and then some tackle my senior year. And so it was all layout forward stuff. We never kicked
Hmm.
backwards ever. I never took a pass
Hmm.
set. Right. So in college coming out, that's what I couldn't do. And that was the detriment. It's like some people are like, man, he's got to learn how to kick set. And I never was a great kick setter in my career. And even when I was, it was because of thousands of hours of sitting out there trying to figure it out myself, not when we practice on my own. And Will is built like that to go chase it that way. And I think that's what I would hold a lot of confidence in his ability to play
Hmm.
well. Obviously, you got to stay healthy, but I think he's built to go chase it. And if I can find an offensive lineman that's got the right shit in his neck and he's built to go chase it, I'm
Yeah.
excited with the potential we have of him being a good football player.
And it's worth pointing out. I mean, Mike Vrabel said a lot of the same thing, right? Right after the Patriots drafted Will, that there's 4 years of tape of him succeeding at the position in the SEC, and that's because he was able to figure out that toolbox, like you kind of said. He was able to figure out what he was good at, and really use those strengths to kind of have his edge. So I think that's great stuff too. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I look at it when I was in college, man. It's the same thing. You can't take away from these guys that play on the highest level that way and play that many years of it. 52. I played 52. I had 52 starts in the SEC. I was like the fifth or sixth lineman or maybe tackle taken in the draft. late
Hmm.
second round. But the reality of it is like, man, you have 4 years of playing against some of the, if you call that the best talent in the country, especially back then in the SEC, then you've got proof that they can do it.
Hmm.
And so I think with Will, he's played at the highest level. He's played some great football players.
Yep.
He's going to have experience with some of the guys that he's going to face on Sundays. He's already faced in college. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is an advantage in itself. And so it's really going to be about the rest of it. And I think he's built to handle it.
Hmm. Well, it certainly seems and well deserved that you have high expectations for him, and as well as so many others do. So, if I guess the a question maybe is, if we were to talk again in 10, 15, 20 years and kind of reflect on Will's career, what would you say are some of the things you envision him accomplishing? And maybe that is specifically on the field as well as both on the field and off the field.
Well, I think it's hard to project guys because unfortunately, having played 16 years, I watched a lot of guys that had the potential to be really good football players that through
Hmm.
injury,
Yep. Yep.
other things, can really dictate your career. But I think that when you're in the draft process and you start drafting kids, exactly what I was kind of touching on a minute ago. You want to draft guys that, one either if you're going to live in a world of taking shots, then they've got to have a lot of talent. But the most important thing to me, if I'm drafting up there and I'm drafting an offensive lineman, is I want to draft guys that one have talent, but two probably maybe B1B have this demeanor to them that they want to go chase success. Like
Yep.
they are
Yep.
thirsty to figure out what it means to be the best at their craft, and they that may come out sometimes through pride, some confidence in some guys. It may come out as a humble quietness that, like, what, like, man, just being around the guy, you can feel they got a little like, hey, I want to go prove myself to people in them. But
Hmm.
you find that in them. Do they have that in them? That to me is one of the biggest things, because I don't care about talent if it doesn't have that ability to go chase success. And so
Hmm.
I think Will has that. And so when I say, all right, 10, 15 years from now, when I look back on this draft, I think the only thing I can control when I say I think Will Campbell's a great pick, I think the guy's got talent, he's got ability, he's got the right character, and he's got chase it to him. He's tough as shit.
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
I'll look back right now and I can say with 100% confidence, this dude will lay it out, and
Hmm.
whatever his potential is, he's going to go get. If that's Pro Bowls, if that's All Pros, if that's leading his team to playoffs, being a part of the reason his offensive line is successful and they become a name of a group that does it the right way. I think they got a quarterback there in Drake May who's going to be a really special football player. So they've got the ability there at the position you want to have the ability to go do something special with. I
Hmm.
think when you look back, you'll say, "Hey, man, this is the kind of dude we want to bring in the building." And we
Yeah.
can't control the uncontrollables, but he's made of the right stuff, and I have a feeling he'll maximize what his potential is.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it, and I just wanna I don't know if there's anything I haven't asked or we haven't touched on or any of that sort of stuff that, you feel like is worth noting?
No, I mean, I think it's great. I think honestly, when you talk about these draft picks, you got to remember the element and really, the situation surroundings they're getting drafted in. And Mike Vrabel,
Mhm.
being built how he's built, he's got a lot of effort in him himself. And so
Yeah.
it putting him around Will Campbell and being able to kind of push that relationship, kind of like I said, if you remember the bond that Taylor Lewan and Will had,
Yeah.
I mean, and Mike had in Tennessee. I see that relationship being similar. Now Taylor's a maniac, but Will's probably a little less maniac than Taylor, but I still see that kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
Vrabel's going to push his buttons a little bit and sees him as a guy he can do that, and that's why I
Mhm.
think it works. I think he sees him as a guy that you're like, hey man, I can see a little myself in him, and I'm going to be able to let him be kind of this guy who's going to lead this group and set the tone day in and day out for us, and
Mhm.
really build the physical mentality side of
Yeah.
what I want my offense to look like. And so I think that's going to be great, and it'll be a huge thing if it can happen for that young quarterback, because man, he's a
Yeah.
stud, and I think they've got a really special one there.
Yeah, and just to your point quickly on the culture sort of setting, that's definitely something that Vrabel has stressed time and time again. I mean, just the Patriots, all of their captains from last year at this point are all out the door, and it's clear that they're Vrabel's new regime and the culture setting that they certainly have eyed in the draft when it comes to Will and all the other picks, the other 11 picks total that they made.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and so I think it's going to be great. I think when you look at the
Hmm.
rest of their draft, I think they made some good decisions. I think that Vrabel, he did a great job of building the Tennessee Titans, and he was one of those guys that shocked you that he wasn't still there when he got
Yeah,
fired, and now he's in New England at home, and so he's a guy I'm really excited about, and as I've told him, man, I can't wait to watch him do what he does and build this team with an identity that I know he'll have, and so. Will's a part of that, man, and I'm excited for Will, man. He gets to carry on the 318 legacy
yeah,
now. He talks about being a fan of mine, but now I get to just
yeah,
be a fan of his, and I can't wait to see him on the road on Thursday Night Football.
yeah,
So it's going to be fun.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that. The Patriots haven't had many primetime games these last few years, but hopefully you'll get out to see him this year.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure we're going to get a chance to get him, and that we look forward to it, man. I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing a little 318 Louisiana boy on the road.
Well, we really do appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. I can't think of anyone better that from the analyst side, from the legendary offensive tackle side, which I've said a few times, as well as someone who knew Will. I can't think of anyone better to talk to about him. So really appreciate you taking the time, and maybe we'll see you at Gillette this year.
Sounds good, brother. I hope so.